I'm Matt Martelli. I'm here with my brother from another, Jim Beaver.
We're tag teaming more and more of these now.
Yeah,
So
and now our other brother from yet another, I don't know if it's woman or man or both. I mean, obviously it's both, right? Ryan Thomas. What's up, man?
Yeah, this is going to go long-winded, though. Like, we got 3 podcasters here.
I know,
Ryan's had his own podcast,
That's right.
so it's like, this could be a long one.
I had you on back, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I just sent you that episode a couple days ago.
You know, it's funny because, we were talking earlier, like, you have your life and you travel this earth and you have all these things, but then there's people that you hang out with and you're just like, oh man, we just want to hang out more. And you're one of those people to me that not only have we had shared experiences, but we've grown up in a shared culture and value it at a certain level. And dude, stoked to have you here. And we're out here at King of the Hammers. The weather,
I'm just meandering by, and you guys.
Well, I was like, we had a couple of podcast dates. And I'm like, wow, that guy looks sexy. And I was teasing him. I'm like, you're over there doing the Frank D'Angelo smoke, and you got the short shaved beard, right? I'm like, okay, we'll get him over here. Let's go, man.
You learn from the best, though, if you're taking it from Frank.
Yeah.
Jeez. God bless Frank, man. I love the guy.
I do too. Yeah.
Well, stoked to be here.
Yeah, I mean, how funny is it? You did some time here running hammers, and you always had to deal with the weather.
Well, let's clarify. Running the business side of hammers. I've never run the hammer trails.
I'm just saying
that's another breed of man.
Let me roll that back. You've stressed out a lot here at Hammers, right? Specifically on the weather, and I'm here in shorts and a t-shirt right now. It's beautiful.
Yeah, some of the guys that have come back from Wyoming, Minnesota, like, I thought it's supposed to be cold here. I'm like, yeah, it is supposed to be cold. This is really not normal.
Yeah.
It's been nice for sure. Although it's looking like we've got a forecast of snow coming up here tomorrow, I think is what it was saying.
I knew rain, but I didn't know the snow part.
Well, I'm out of here if that's the case. I'm just saying I'm going back to the coast.
flip-flops and shorts don't work.
Yeah, I was mad that I had to put shoes on.
Yeah, me too.
I think let's paint the picture real quick with Ryan before we jump into things, because I mean, Matt and I have known you forever, and you've had so many different hats in this industry. I mean, currently you're running the Polaris factory racing program. Prior to that, you were with King of the Hammers.
Hold on, which has been, like, to give you credit, I was talking to Ivan Stewart about this the other day, and I don't know that any team has ever started and dominated as much as you guys have. So a lot of credit there.
Well, I certainly don't deserve it, man. There's a whole host of incredible people as a part of the team, and the drivers are insane, obviously. But we've got a crew back at the shop, and then all the support back in Minnesota, and then our other partners. It's a group effort, and it's been a long push here for the last 12 months, and the momentum builds, the morale. I keep telling the guys, man, God, one of these days we're gonna lose. Hopefully not soon, but we can't let that take the wind out of our sails when it happens.
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean, you have. I mean, like, everything from the crew chief, Johnny Nelson, right? This dude's a bad motherfucker.
I've never met anybody that has the drive and determination and the focus that Johnny does.
I'm going to take a tangent with Johnny for a second here. So Johnny used to work for BJ Baldwin, and I talked BJ into taking his trophy truck and loading it in a sea crate and going to Germany for this event. And we had this cocoon that was supposedly going to keep it in perfect shape, and that didn't work.
Oh, while it was on the boat,
right? And it got out, and it was just complete disaster. And Johnny re-prepped the truck, and then he realized, like, he didn't have any. His clothing bag was missing, so he didn't have any clean clothes. I don't know. We were there for 2 weeks, so he would pull a 16-hour day, go home, wash his clothes in the bathtub, put his clothes back on, and show up with me every day at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, ready to go.
No, he's the one focus is to win.
Yeah,
every single aspect of what he thinks about and does, and there's no stone left unturned. It's right on down to that last zip tie.
No, and then when you look at the drivers that you guys have, I mean, what's cool to me, what I respect is, like, you've given guys that needed a little leg up, like Brock Hager, that opportunity. And it's like, my God, of course that guy's going to win. He's a savage.
He's got a PhD in desert navigation, man, or off-road terrain navigation. His ability to utilize, every square inch of the race course, a lot like Robbie Gordon. Robbie, he uses the terrain to his advantage, and he's not forcing the vehicle to do stuff that it shouldn't do, and anything that makes it slower. Brock he's just so fluid and smooth, and he's so nonchalant and super humble.
Yeah.
But I'm learning that he's a lot more calculated than he plays himself off to be.
Totally.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes there, and he's pretty strategic in the way he approaches things.
He's definitely a quiet killer. And then you look at his teammates, and you're like, oh, we're going to get Caden Mack, right? And then now Max Eddy, right?
Yeah.
And Max is an interesting guy to me because he's one of these desert rats that should probably never get the opportunity, or, I shouldn't say should, but normally in the world wouldn't. And
well,
now,
I think he's been. I identify a lot with him. He's kind of been just in the shadows of almost making it,
He's continuously done the work.
Oh, 100%. And he has been a part of and been a massive contributing factor to multiple Baja 1000 victories on motorcycles. So I would argue with you, he 100% deserves to be there.
Well, I don't mean in the sense that he doesn't deserve it. I mean in the sense that normally a guy like that,
they don't get the breaks.
They don't get the
breaks.
Right?
And I think that's
no. And I'll tell you what, that's a testament, honestly. And I'm learning this as I age. It's relationships.
Sure.
That is the relationships matter, and of course, being skilled at whatever it is that you're wanting to do, that's a given. But you've also got to know the people that can open the doors for you.
Well, and I've said that, and I tell that to a lot of young racers, and they're sitting there, and I admire the hustle, but they're sitting there and they're just spamming a marketing deck out to 300 companies hoping somebody bites them. Like, it's not going to happen. What happens is going, shaking hands, kissing babies, introducing yourself.
But it's also hanging around the campfire when nobody's there and talking to somebody that you don't know who they are and being real and creating a relationship that isn't based around wanting something from somebody.
Well, that's how I tell people, generally business in this industry. And I don't mean a pitch. I mean it happens in a bar, having a cocktail after hours or something like that. And it's like you said, you're meeting people that you didn't know. And, and maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, something happens. They remember a conversation. They go, you know what? They might be a good fit for that.
Yeah, 100%. So, our driver lineup is it's well-rounded, and Caden is he is an incredibly talented driver. But out of the three of them, he's got the least amount of experience. Of course, we know where he's come from, and he spent some time in the desert. But he's got the least amount of time, racing in the desert. And so to have Max, well, and we can't forget Craig. Craig's the patriarch of this whole thing,
Okay, I'm gonna go on a tangent on Scanlon. We go way back. What I love about Scanlon is he's a Philly shit kid, right? This is a guy. No, seriously. This is a guy who shouldn't have made it in the, in the corporate world, right? Because of where he's from, and he put 100% hustle into it.
Yeah.
And then threw himself into off road. He was out here sleeping on couches, shaking hands, trying to figure stuff out. And since then, I've never met an executive from any company in off-road that's done the work that he's done, right? And, he's given us opportunities. He's given...
Oh, man. I think you could argue that a large part of the UTV movement in our culture, in our sport...
100%.
Is...
he was the guy that I went to and said, hey, we have this crazy idea of doing XP1K. It's going to cost north of $1 million. And he's like... Sounds cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right? What kind of person does that? So, but then to have him still continue on and supporting these people, and it's funny because, again, it's this thing of looking at guys and I'm gonna pick on Max Eddy, he isn't like the social media guru, you know, the super young guy with spiky hair with the hot chick and the Lamborghini. I mean, this is a guy who's a grinder of off-road, and he gives that guy the opportunity.
Yeah.
And what does that guy do? He goes, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to take this to the bank. And he does.
No, and Max is dead serious about it as well.
And I love that because, like, that gives every dude who grew up in Barstow or every dude who grew up in, you know, any of the El Centro, any of the desert communities, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's the fire that's like, hey, you know what?
It's interesting. I'm just now seeing this parallel. It's interesting that those kids, those people are at least on our team, the ones that are getting some of these opportunities. Much like the kids that grow up on the beach in the apartment or whatever.
100%.
You know, I mean, the kids that just happen to be born on the North Shore that are now the world's top surfers. Yeah, all you guys out there in El Centro and Barstow and Victorville, there's hope.
Yeah.
100% there's hope. I mean, like, and that's the funny thing. You and I talk about this all the time, and we can relate it to surf culture. Is like, how do you become, you know, one of the most important people, not just in this particular sport, but in the world, right? Like, it's funny because you parallel it with things like basketball and football and all this stuff, and those empires are built. Our empire is only 56 years old, right? But the kids that we have coming up now are incredible. I mean, our kids are over smashing everybody in Dakar, right? I just earlier, actually yesterday, we were hanging out with Braybeck, you know, and doing a podcast with him, and I'm like, listen, dude, like, straight up, you're the baddest motherfucker on the planet. Like, there is no motorsport in the world that goes 14 days, right, on a motorcycle. In dunes in the dirt.
All of it.
Right? Everybody talks about like, oh, cool, I won the Olympics. I'm like, cool, you did one event. That's cool. You should have a medal.
Whatever you do, General Tire delivers.
I'll tell you, I went to Dakar back when it was still in Africa, not as a driver, but that's another story. But I was embedded with the Mitsubishi team, and I can remember as a young 20-year-old when the guys would come over from Europe and race the Baja 1000, and we would, you know, make fun of them, laugh at them. Oh yeah, Dakar, but you sleep every night, and dude, 10, 12, 14 days, even though you sleep every night. I was just driving a support vehicle, and I was done after the 7th or 8th day. Yeah. No, that is. I mean, the Baja 1000. It is. We all know what that is, and this race is a whole different beast. But Dakar, just the duration of it alone, and the navigational challenges. I don't know so much about just the wildness that I experienced in Africa. That carries with it a whole other set of variables that are make things difficult. I think being based out of Saudi Arabia, and I think
it's easier. I'll say it. Listen, I don't think there's any continent as wild as Africa.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll say it. And I haven't been to Africa. I'm looking forward to going there.
Yeah, I went. We started in Portugal, Spain, went across the Med, and then Morocco, Mauritania, Mali, and Senegal. It was gnarly.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
I tell this story. So we were, whatever it was, 2 or 3 days from Portugal down to Spain, and then we were the first ones on the dock staring at the ferry as they brought it up. And so we wanted to be first on the boat, you know, first off the boat. Yeah. And they were putting us down underneath. But they got it up, everybody gets off, and then they drug these 3 guys that had stowed away from Morocco out onto the deck, and they beat the crap out of them with billy clubs. Bam. I mean, it was grotesque. And then they dragged him back in, and it was kind of like, hey, this is what happens if you stow away on the boat, so don't mess around. And I was like, oh, that's gnarly. Then we pull in down to the bowels of the boat, and it's dark and dank, and I was riding in one of the 6x6 trucks. And I opened the door, and there was a French guy sitting next to me in the middle, I dropped down, and my feet are like in something wet and sticky, and I was like, what the heck? And by that time, the French guy's on the ground, and I'm following this trail of blood back to these 3 cages where they'd put these guys that they just beat the crap out of.
Oh, gnarly.
And the French guy standing next to me, he could see like I was tripping out, and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, welcome to Africa, my friend. I was like, oh, all right, this is how it's going to be.
Oh, mind your P's and Q's.
Yeah.
That's gnarly. Yeah, Dakar, that's another one that's taken this whole, went from, was Paris to Dakar and then just Dakar. Then it moved to South America. Now it's, in the Middle East. And that's crazy. That's an event that's just continued to evolve, and it's gone through just different iterations. And
I think I've heard you say this at one point, but when you think about all the different sports, action sports, hobbies, the off-road lifestyle is as close to like the old school cowboy lifestyle that we live today.
We're cowboys.
Our horses are different, and we create our own challenges and whatever. But I think a lot of what drives, whether it's at a recreational level or a competitive level, that thing that makes a cowboy want to be a cowboy, a Frank D'Angelo. It's within those of us that enjoy being in the dirt.
I've had this conversation, and that there's that key world lifestyle. There's only 2 motorsports in the world that I consider a lifestyle. You don't live an IndyCar lifestyle.
Right.
You don't live an NASCAR lifestyle. There's some hillbillies with Dale Earnhardt, shaved into their backs that would say that. But you don't live a NASCAR lifestyle. You live an off-road lifestyle. Yeah. And I include motocross in that because there's people that live a motocross lifestyle. Off-road and motocross, you live that lifestyle. The only other thing on the planet that I've seen is the hot rodders that do drag racing and things like that. You live a hot rod drag racing lifestyle.
Sure, I can see that.
So, but off-road, you use the word lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. Yeah. And when guys like us, you had the day off, and what did you do? You came out to Hammers to hang out because it's in your blood. It's like
I don't know if I go that far. I just was camped a little ways up and kind of ran into a time when I didn't have a ton to do, so I figured. And I was coming down to look at the competition that was getting attacked.
Well, you guys also, you swept the other day. Let's talk about that.
It was a good day.
Let's, here's the thing. Again, I'm not tied to one specific manufacturer, so I can say this has been a Can-Am dominant event for a long time.
100%. Well, it's not that long because when I started here in 2020,
Mitchie was
so Can-Am was the title sponsor of the UTV race, but Polaris had been kicking their ass.
Yeah.
And I can remember talking to one of the guys at Can-Am. He's like, dude, if we don't start winning races, it's going to be hard to justify being the title sponsor of this thing. So it's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's not lost on anybody in our group that we just came into Can-Am territory at least last Sunday and
swept.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just like, hey, we won. We swept.
Yeah.
Like that. It was remarkable. I honestly, it's like me being somebody who I understand all the variables. Like I'm like, I didn't expect that. I was like, man, if they get a podium, that'll be cool. But sweeping it was a dominant performance.
Yeah.
You should be proud of that. The team you guys are putting together, it's impressive. And again, it's like, going back and talking about your history and your pedigree, you were born into this with your dad, right? You started at, being a child with Kenneth, and like figuring everything out and like all the pieces and the parts, right? And now, fast forward whatever years later, I'm not going to say it because it makes me feel old, right?
I'm 51, man.
A few years later, right? You're with, a major manufacturer and helping them dominate the space. It's pretty cool.
It's an honor. It truly is an honor. And I said this when we had we did a big photo shoot at the beginning of last year, and and you had kind of paid homage to Ivan and PPI. I don't think we've seen in this segment of off-road motorsports, we haven't seen a team approach things the way we're approaching them since the PPI days.
I agree.
I would argue, and I don't know this, there is significant resources being allocated to this team for sure. I tend to believe that Toyota was dumping more resources into the PPI program. But there's I remember one time, I was a kid. I was 13, 14 years old, and in the pits somewhere down in Mexico, and we were standing next to Cal, and Ivan comes over the radio and he says, "You're not going to believe this, but I just bent the steering wheel, and I'm sure we don't have a spare steering wheel or something." And Cal gets on the radio. He says, "Every single chase truck has a spare steering wheel. Pull into the chase trucks." Like, they have a spare steering wheel. Every one of the chase trucks.
Like And
so my point is, it is an honor to be involved in this, because to me, I recognize, like, you can look back. You're aware of the legacy that PPI and Toyota created with Ivan, and there will be a time, I believe, that we look back in history and go, man, that Polaris factory racing team really raised the bar, and to have the opportunity to be a part of that, it's a great honor.
Yeah, well, I think just UTV and racing in general, and we've seen, some of the Can-Am programs step up, and I think, especially after what you guys have done, it was kind of a Wild West for a long time, and things got fast, but, and the cars got faster and the technology was, but it was still, everything was run really loose, and I think you guys were the first team to come in and really just polish everything. And run a program the way, because there was a lot of money being tossed around.
Sure.
But it was, it was just kind of willy-nilly. You guys came in and you put together a plan and you just elevated everything.
Yeah. And it's every person involved in it too. I mean, there's definitely the concept was spawned at Polaris, and the vision was shared with us. Another guy, Adam Arsenault, he is our operations director, and it's the same thing. Like Johnny at the technical side with the cars. Everything else, Adam, I mean, there's no stone left unturned. And again, we will, and we have run into budget roadblocks, but then we start looking for the more economic ways around those roadblocks. So it's the approach that we're taking is there's a couple of different objectives. The one, obviously, is to win and dominate winning. But let's not forget this connection between, and this is what the PPI days and Toyota days didn't have. There is absolutely a connection between what we are doing, the things that we're learning, and the way that we're adapting and developing, that they will and already have found their ways into cars that consumers are buying to come out here and have fun. And the honest reality of it, everybody thinks, oh, those cars are so exotic. They have the chassis was designed by some engineers that spent a lot of time figuring out how to make it as light as possible and be safe and be strong. But we're bolting a lot of stock parts onto those cars.
It's interesting, and then I'm going to get personal for a second. Okay, in the context of PPI, but also Cheneth, right? Like, imagine what your dad would think right now.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I've thought about that quite a bit, actually, of if he was still around and this was all going on, where he would fit into it and how he would be in the peripheral or right in the middle of it. Who knows?
Come on, he'd be so stoked that this was even evolving, that it even evolved to this.
Yeah.
It's badass to continue that legacy.
Well, I think just side-by-sides in general, you go back even as recently as 10 years ago, but especially you go back 15, and to think that you, one, would have programs at the level that your guys' program is, but two, I mean, everybody just laughed. Golf carts, the Rhino was there. It was just like one of those, I remember the first time racing Vegas to Reno, there's a Rhino there. I go, what the hell's the matter with that guy? Why would you want to do that?
So you're missing a gap there.
Yeah.
That ties back to the Cheneth days.
Yeah.
And Lynn developing the Mini Mag. That man was ahead of his time.
Oh, way ahead of his time.
We had a side-by-side in the 80s. It was Yamaha 2-cylinder, 1,000 cc. It was, CVT clutch. We had to do our own gearbox. But, I mean, that was 87, 88, I believe.
Mini Mag. I remember as a kid watching the Mini Mags at Parker, and I was like, always, I want a Mini Mag.
Yeah.
They were cool looking, too.
They were cool. They were fast. But the part that sucked for me was because it was a spec class, the owner of the company's son, or the son of the owner.
Couldn't race.
I couldn't. No.
Yeah.
No, and that was watching Charlie Townsley and all my friends, Scott Steinberger.
Yeah.
they were all running those cars. Rory was able to do it. He kind of sidestepped that. And it wasn't like there was a rule. My dad just said, no, there's no way that, that people will tolerate you being
first minute time you win a race. Oh, he cheated. He had better whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I think that's one of the things to impress upon people that are listening to this is this shit didn't fall out of the sky. There are a lot of people that created this evolution and engineered this. It came from their minds. They welded it. They built it in their backyard. They built it in their shop, and now it's cool because hey, the bitchin' thing is you don't need to know anything or need to know anybody. You just walk into a Polaris dealership and you're like, I want a Pro R.
Yeah.
And it is an incredibly capable machine.
It's brought access.
Especially for the dollar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's opened up access to this lifestyle that we've either chosen or been born into, but nonetheless love. The access in those early days was more difficult. You know, I mean,
you had to know
you could buy a motorcycle, but to be in a car, you were building a Volkswagen.
But even beyond that, being a kid that wasn't born here, right? I was born in Michigan. I showed up in El Cajon in mid '80s, hit the jackpot, right? But if you weren't there, it was like, how do you get a buggy?
Yeah.
How do you get a car? Oh, well, these guys who basically don't advertise because they're so busy locally filling orders.
And most of them didn't build turnkey car. We built chassis.
Yeah.
So even the racers back then, the guys that were filled out the majority of the field, they bought a chassis, sometimes not even a rolling chassis.
Right.
So this concept of being able to show up and write a check and get in the car and start it and drive it into your trailer.
Or be financed.
Well, yeah, that's the whole nother level for sure. Yeah. Definitely, it's interesting to, I don't feel like I'm 51, and I was sitting on the starting line last November in Craig's car and realizing, holy crap, it was 2024, and that was my first Baja 1000 was 1990.
Yeah.
So over 30 years, which I don't know how the hell that happened.
Right.
But I guess where I was going with that is to watch the changes, both good and bad. It has been a good reminder of enjoying. You don't realize that you're living in the golden era. And I was just talking with a good friend Jim Hancock the other day.
Yeah.
About the wide open days.
Yeah.
And I think it was we were talking about seeing Tommy on the podcast here.
Oh, dude, that was I was having such a good time, and it was funny because after that I was texting Todd, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, we haven't talked in a while. I want you to know that the impact that you had or that you had on this culture means something, right? I want you to feel the love, right? Because it meant something. It taught me lessons. It brought in all these other people, and then it's funny because I'm hanging out with you, having a conversation. Then I'm hanging out with Earl, and then I'm hanging out with Tommy and
it goes. James DeGain. There's a whole host of Mexican guys,
right?
Yeah,
and I'm like, literally hilarious conversations. So the other day, I'm talking to Rick from 01, and they're busy with military stuff, right? And I'm like, hey, dude, I need 6 rental vehicles. And he's like, man, we don't have them. And I'm like, I call Savage. I'm like, I need 6 of these rental vehicles, right? How much is that going to cost me? He's like, you can't afford it right now, right? And I'm like, wait, we're just repeating what has already happened, right? And that era.
And he paved the way. Todd, I'll never forget it. He came down to Cheneth and pitched the concept to my dad and I about building the cars, partnering with him. And at first, he was kind of beating around the bush, But ultimately, it was, hey, build these cars, and then I'll let you be a partner in the company.
Right.
And we were thinking, oh, we're going to build some cars and sell them.
Right.
And he went and, ended up doing it with Savage. But I'll never forget it when he left. My dad looked at me, he's like, he's never going to be able to make a business out of this. Like, there's no possible way this could work.
Now we need the business more than ever.
Yeah.
It's funny because, like, we want to do it with UTVs, but there's a weird thing that you guys had figured out was that there's a point where it's like guys don't want to get in a UTV. They honestly don't want to get in a buggy. In their head, it's got to be a truck. The romantic photo that they want to be in is, being, Ivan Stewart.
I don't know, man. I think that's the sign of your age.
Maybe.
I mean, I think
I'm also 51.
I know, and I know
I look a lot younger than you, but
there's a lot of. I think the rally stuff has changed that perception a bit.
I don't know. Like, what's funny for me about the rally stuff is, and I'm a rally guy. I'm the guy who did Gymkhana 1, 2, and 3, and I wanted to make, and I still want to make rally relevant in America, but this is America. We are truck nation, and maybe it is my age, but I don't romanticize about being in a buggy,
a Subaru,
in a car. I want to be Chuck Norris. I want to be Steve McQueen. You know what I mean? And even the modern guys, like when I look at the guy that is currently racing with us, that I'm like, that dude's a badass. I want to be like him, right? He's driving a truck. So maybe that's the old school, like,
there's something about a V8.
Yeah, maybe that's the old school smoking Marlboros and drinking beer and whiskey and getting into fist fights or whatever. Being an alpha male.
Yeah.
Right? Alpha males don't drive Subarus. I'm sorry.
Well, I think we're spoiled too, because I'm a guy that's worked in stage rally for years, and was a host over there, and I got to watch it. It's like the talent level to drive a rally car fast. I'd argue it might take more talent to do that than it does race a trophy truck. And I have a lot of off-road people assassinate me, but bear with me. It's hard to show that.
David Higgins.
Yeah, David Higgins, that guy, there's no doubt you could put him in an all-wheel drive Mason truck right now and he could go out and give him enough test time. And I don't mean like years. I mean just enough test days. He could go out and be competitive with the Baja 1000.
Dude, how cool would it be to drop John Buffum?
Oh, God. I don't know if the off-road world can handle John Buffum.
That'd be so. Here you go, John. Here's a four-wheel drive Mason. You know what I mean? By the way, we're going to team you up with Larry Rosser. Let's go.
Yeah, keep in mind in the Off-Road Hall of Fame, which Ryan's dad, thankfully, is in the Off-Road Hall of Fame now. That's finally well-deserving. There's only 2 rally guys in the Off-Road Hall of Fame, John Buffum and David Higgins.
Yes.
So that tells you these guys are cut from a different cloth.
Right.
But it's like, I don't think you can showcase how that talent is, because now with the whole Instagram and like Reels and TikTok, it's like jumping a trophy truck 20 feet in the air. It actually doesn't take any talent, but it's a hell of a lot cooler than watching a rally car go fast around a corner. So it's like, I think the world has just morphed into this exuberance. Like trophy trucks, like monster trucks. You're flipping through the channels and you see Monster Jam and you see a truck do a backflip, you'll stop for 30 seconds because, I just watched it. Whether you care about Monster Jam or not, watching a monster truck backflip is cool.
Yeah.
Trophy trucks are cool. Jumping a UTV 20 feet in the air is cool. Rally cars, it's not as cool anymore because it's just hard to showcase that to the 5-second video generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you that. There's some freaking good wrecks, though, man.
Yeah, rally car wrecks are next level, but I don't know. And
everybody loves a good wreck,
But
and I'm really glad I'm not a rally car promoter, because the crashes are just
it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, like, trophy trucks, and I say this because I've crashed trophy trucks at speed. We're lucky that most, and I know in Baja it's a different animal, but here in the you wreck a trophy truck at 100 miles an hour at the Mint, there's a lot of room.
Yeah,
and
you
there's a lot of
dissipate the energy over time.
You dissipate the energy over time.
Yeah.
Rally cars hit trees at 100 miles an hour. And I think that's the difference,
Yeah, 100%.
Trophy trucks at least have that runoff to dissipate the energy.
That's the thing. When you were talking about how you can't tell the rally story in the 6-second clips, I don't disagree with you. But as somebody who has some skill set and spent some time around behind the wheel, when you look at the edge of the envelope that they're pushing, and the consequences if they go over the edge, and the precision that the good guys are operating with, that's mad respect for the rally car drivers for sure. In fact, I think I'm correct in remembering Robbie was dating a Swedish girl back 25, 30 years ago.
God bless him.
But her father was a rally racer. Right. And I remember talking to Robbie one time, and he's like, man, I'm telling you, rally car drivers are the best race car drivers that exist in this world, because he'd gone for a ride with whoever this guy was.
Yeah.
Well,
I hope that's right, Robbie, if I remember that right.
Well, you take this a couple of years ago, Nasser, and he was doing Dakar, but he's also doing WRC at the same time.
Yeah.
Nasser shows up to score. Everybody knows who Nasser is. Ha, 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 whatever. He comes and just literally mic drops. And I'm like...
Almost won.
And almost won, but everybody's like, holy crap, he's a rally car guy, and he just came into our backyard and just destroyed us.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've been super fortunate in that I've ridden with a lot of the top off-road racers, and then some of the top rally racers, and Higgins in particular, when we were, getting Ken Block up to speed, I got to ride with him, and I'm like, it was one of those rides where I'm like, holy shit, I don't know anything. Like, I don't know. I thought this is the limit of a car, and this guy just pushed it so much further that every corner that we were in, I thought we were crashing, and I had to recalibrate what I was thinking, right? And so, I agree with you. I think that, rally as a discipline it's much more disciplined, and we've seen glimpses of it, right? We saw the glimpse of when San Felipe, got won by a Class 1 car, beat all the trophy trucks, right? And that was a rally driver, right?
Dorks.
Yeah, but specifically it was a rally driver who did that, right? And it's one of those things. And again, like, I'm excited about the evolution of off-road with UTVs and things crossing over and different racers racing different disciplines. I think it's just going to elevate it. And I'm really proud, too, like, when you look at Dakar and Rally Raid right now, it's like, our guys are over there kicking the shit out of everybody. And even our ladies, like, dude, what Sarah did this year, was basically like, hey, it's going to cost you $400,000 to go to Dakar. Figure that out. You're buying a house.
Yeah.
So instead of buying a house, you go race Dakar. And somehow not only she put that together, but then she went over there and she did really, really well. She won a stage. She was in contention for most of the series for the overall in her class. And, Seth Quintero, Mitch Guthrie Jr., A.J. Jones, Braybeck, all the
Casey Curry a couple years ago went over there.
Casey Curry, yeah. I was saying this earlier in the podcast with Braybeck, but I think it's time for Team America. So, hey, no pressure, but let's do it the right way.
Yeah, no, that would be a fun one for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny. We're like dancing all around these different genres of off-road, but we're sitting here at Hammers right now.
Oh, yeah.
with some of the best weather that I think we've ever been blessed with. At least
knock on wood. Tomorrow it's supposed to rain. So.
I know, but man, what an exciting place to be. You know,
it is cool. I mean, it's funny because you know, let's give some love to Hammers. Like, you talk about the evolution of this discipline, and like, I can't remember what year it was, like year three or four, and it was starting to go. And Jeff Knoll called us up, and he's like, "Man, I really love what you've done with the Mint. You know, let's partner." And I'm not a rock crawler. You know, I'll admit that right off the bat. I respect the hell out of what's going on here. It's incredible. They're racing over mountains. If you haven't seen this for yourself, get off your fucking couch and come out here and see this.
Well, it's the accessibility of it, too. You can go into the canyons and sit there 10 feet from the car.
It's incredible. It is one of the most incredible motorsports on the planet. You know, like, they're literally racing over mountains.
It's physics defying.
Yeah,
is honestly. I mean, the canyons that they turn into those are dead ends at the Baja 1000.
But even
you turn around.
But
if you
even
get into
that, like,
canyons.
knowing all those vehicle logistics, right? Like, in you know what the vehicle's capable of. If you know, before I came and saw this for myself, if somebody said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go over that mountain," I'd be like, "Get the fuck out of here." Right?
That's like you get people who talk about, "Oh God, Matomi's so bad this year."
Yeah.
And then you get these Ultra 4 guys going, "Yeah."
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't even warm our shocks up yet going through
like,
Matomi.
well, we don't even go in Matomi because we just go over the mountain.
Right.
Yeah. But it is funny, like, you know, us desert racers, you hear that every year. It's like right around San Felipe time, "Oh, Matomi's really bad this year," or something. And you're there like, yeah, no.
But it's also really cool, and I have a lot of respect for Jeff and Dave, obviously, for building this. I mean, when you think about the insanity of, like, hey, you know, we're going to put on a race for vehicles that don't really exist. We're going to take these vehicles that kind of can do it, and, you know, we're going to get, 12 guys together, and we're going to do this crazy thing and turn it into what it is. It's incredible.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. You know, we don't realize that we're either living in this a golden era or that we're creating a legacy until it's over with.
Right.
You know, and that's I guess when I was asked to be a part of this thing with Polaris, and as the pieces started to come into place, I'm conscious. I'm like, wow, this could be one of those times, right? Like, I want to enjoy this now so that I don't look back on it and go, man, I was a part of that, but I didn't realize how cool it was when I was a part of it. That's a lot like the wide open stuff, man. I mean, that we were doing cool stuff back then, and there was nobody. I mean, the moto guys, Tim was running moto tours, Morton, and I always draw a blank on the other one. There was two guys that were doing moto tours down there, but there were no side-by-sides. The Overlanders hadn't found Baja. We were down there. I mean, I spent so many...
What's crazy to me, though, is that, like, the effect of what you guys did still has effect on our culture to this day.
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, it's giving access.
Yeah.
There was no shortage of customer that you know, it wasn't cheap. You had to have some money to come and do that with us. You know, they come down once, and first thing is they're impressed that a car can do what it does. But then the whole allure of Baja. I mean, Matt, there's a guy that has now been coming to the races helping us. His name is Chase, and I met him 20-something years ago on a wide open trip. He had never been to Baja.
Yeah.
Now he routinely, as an almost 60-year-old man, once a year he goes down and rides motorcycles in Baja in all the areas where I showed him.
Yeah.
You know, 20-something years ago. And here he is coming to the races that he never knew anything about and supporting the Polaris team as one of the pit crew members.
It's funny, though, like, the contagiousness of the freedom of what we do. It's just magical, man.
Yeah.
Like, it almost doesn't matter if like, Baja is Baja. Like, it's very special. But it's the same out here at Johnson Valley as it is in the Mojave, as it is in the Sonoran
Even
Desert.
up in the Sierras, man.
Yeah.
You should go, I mean, it's to get outside of everything fabricated, everything built, and be in nature and have the ability to move in nature in comfort.
It's like a Zen Musashi kind of thing of, like, literally, like, okay, there are two paths in life. Path number one is you're going to drive down the freeway and you're going to have the same experience that everybody else does. And path number 2 is you're going to step off that freeway and you're going to look at the dirt road and you're going to go like, I wonder what's down there. And once you start doing that, then you're an off-roader.
Yeah.
And it's contagious.
It's contagious, and there's jealousy from everybody else on the outside, too.
It never ends, man.
It's like I've been on the grid at the Indy 500, and, I know quite a few drivers in IndyCar now, and I'll be standing biggest race arguably in the world, right? And all these drivers want to talk about is Baja, UTVs, what long travel kit they should put on the UTV they just bought, or what it's like to drive a trophy truck. And I laugh because I'm like, here's some of the biggest badasses in the world getting ready to go 235 miles an hour and, in one of the gnarliest races in the world, and they just want to talk about off-road.
Jim, I had an experience with Jim Hancock again, invited to the Race of Champions, and this was when it was in Paris, and through a series of events, I found myself sitting at this 12-person table at the Georges Schenck Hotel on the Champs-Élysées. I'm sure I'm screwing all those words up. But at that table was Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, Kenny Brock, Sebastian Bourdais. I mean, the motorsports elite, right? Yeah. And it's a couple rally cars. I think Sebastian Loeb was sitting there. But a couple years prior, Sebastian Bourdais and Oriol Servia and Michel Jourdain had come and raced the Baja 1000 with Wide Open. So Jim, as I go to sit, he's like, yeah, your table's over there. I'm like, I'm not sitting over there. And he's like, no, you're sitting over there. Jimmy and Jeff aren't here yet. You're representing the United States. And he introduces me as a 5-time Baja 1000 winner. And I sit down and, I knew Sebastian and said hi. And I'm like stoked. We're going to get to talk about racing Ferraris and whatever else. And that entire night, all of those guys, all they wanted to do was talk about Baja. So I agree with you. There's something about what we do that is definitely, I mean, let's face it, we're still hillbillies and cowboys. Yeah. We are. I mean, look at us.
Yeah.
But it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is the beauty of it, I feel, right? Is that like, you can talk all the game you want, but at the end of the day, it's like going into a MMA fight. You don't know how it's going to come out, right? You're going to, a $4 part's going to stop you. The Mojave Desert's going to stop you. Your mind, your physical failures, that might stop you.
Your lack of preparation.
all these variables, right? And so when you get to the end of it, it's like, for lack of a better term, it's religious, right?
I've had this conversation and people like, I've been put in some situations in my life and people like, you remain calm. Like, why weren't you just like torn up or whatever? And I go, because when I was racing trophy truck, especially if you go race trophy truck in Baja, I said, you have to be in a mindset that I'm going to go and race this car and I'm going to do it in some extreme situations. And there's a chance I might die today.
Yeah.
And I said, anybody that races at that level, you have to come to terms with there's a good chance I might die. And every once in a great while, it sucks, but it does happen, And I go, so because of that, I can be put in some crazy situations in normal life where I just remain calm because it's like
it's funny.
I can set my mind to the mindset where I might die today. But you talk to Pastrana and action sports guys, they're going to do a triple flip or whatever.
Same thing.
They have to come to terms with I might not walk away from this.
So one of our clients at Wide Open, I'll never forget this. We'd always ask, like, what's the best part about it? At the end of the trip, what's your best memory, or why do you like it so much, or why do you keep coming back? And I can't remember who it was. Might have been Jake Culberson. The response was, it's one of the last things in the world you can do where you can almost kill yourself. Where it's not so safe. It's not an activity. I have all the money I need to do whatever I want to, and this is the one thing that I can do and spend money and risk my life, like really risk my life.
Sure.
That's something about that drives. I mean, I can't speak for the female gender, and I don't know if it's the same, but definitely at
100%
the male gender, it's freedom. That challenge of facing your mortality, whether it's contrived or a natural scenario. There's something about that I think is good for the human species.
Yeah, it's freedom. It's the freedom to challenge yourself, and I don't think that's a male female.
Here comes hammers.
Yeah, here comes the wind.
We got a little breeze here now, but that's part of it. But awesome, man.
Yeah.
you do, General Tire delivers.
This is a good conversation. I didn't
What,
know
is it over? Are we done?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
well, that's I laugh. As like the three of us, we could probably talk to you forever. Good talking old stories and just stuff like that. You know, it's that's what I love.
Well, I think it's cool what you're doing. I mean, when I did that one, whatever it was back in, I think it was 2017, 18 Baja Sessions.
I'm just trying to think when it was. Yeah,
it was right in that time frame. But
need to restart that.
Well,
Keep it going.
So
Ryan's a hell of a podcaster.
Yeah.
He really is. Like, I mean,
appreciate that.
You know a thing or two about a thing or two. I'm just saying. There's like, you know, again, it's funny because I know like the era, and like we're probably running past each other at multiple events as kids, right? But
or skate ditches.
yeah, of course. And you know, unlocking those people and those stories, I think it's really important. I was talking the other day to Bob Bauer about it, and one of the things that I realized is that the last few decades of print media that we grew up on, that's never been digitized. So kids now can't Google that and find out, like, oh,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to, you know, for us 51-year-olds, right, to put that stuff out there. So, you know,
I'm the young guy at the table for once.
yeah, all these people can find out about. You know what I mean? Like,
I think there's that part of it for sure. What I enjoyed about the podcast that I was doing, and it was a perfect, you know, Riley handed it off to me and it had the name, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how do I follow this theme? And I came to the realization that most good things that have happened to me in my life over the last 30-something years somehow have this thread of Baja woven through it.
Sure.
And I think to me that is, again, as you start getting older and looking back at time, recognizing that so much of the life you live is creating the life you lived is creating the life you're going to live through the people and the places and the things that you do. And man, don't take that for granted. Don't be an asshole.
100%.
Recognize that there's opportunity around every corner, every door, and you never know how that's going to play out in the future. And that the podcast for me, the funniest thing was there's a guy, Gever Tully. He was on that podcast, and he was a software engineer at Intuit, and decided to start an after-school or a summer camp for kids called the Tinkering School, which eventually turned into a year-round school, private school, but completely different than any kind of modern education. All project-based, involvement from big corporations, giving, like Home Depot supplied all kinds of tools. I was fascinated with this guy, right? And I had a son that was 1 or 2, and I sent him an email, just found his email address. The school's in San Francisco called Brightworks. And I sent him an email saying, hey, you know, I love what you've done with this school. My son's 2. I need one of these schools in San Diego in 3 years. What do I got to do to start one? Never heard a word from the guy. But I've been following him on Instagram, and lo and behold, he shows a picture of, what are they, the parachutes with the motor on their back? The paraglider.
Yeah.
He's a big paraglider, and he's down in Baja. He takes an annual trip to Baja paragliding. So I see that, and I send him an instant message on his Instagram account telling him, hey, this is what I do, and I saw you love Baja, and you should come on my show. And by the way, if you look back in your email 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, you'll see an email from me that you never answered, you asshole. Let's get you on my podcast.
Right.
And I had a guy that, again, and not that I've ever really met him, but completely outside of anything off-road, but that thing of Baja, that thing of...
I think it's the Malcolm thing of like good roads or bad roads bring good people, right? I think that, you know, in order to, you know, go have the experience off-road and in particular in Baja, like you have to pass the threshold.
You've whittled down such a large group of human beings that anybody that happens to be in these environments that we're in, you've already got a lot in common with them.
Right, you're like, hey, let's get scary. You know what I mean? Like, really, you know what I mean?
Let's go see if we can break something in the middle of nowhere and be stranded and then have to solve that problem.
But, like, when you really get to the psychology of it, it's cutting the umbilical cord.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, you grow up in the United States, you have Starbucks, you have roads, you have all this shit, right? And you're safe, right? And even in the gnarliest neighborhoods, 'cause I've lived in those gnarly neighborhoods,
Sure.
you're still like, the street lights come on, you know, the streets get clean, the garbage gets picked up, we have infrastructure. There's an umbilical cord to attach you to that. And when you step off to these other countries, in particular Baja, because it's connected to us, right? And I'm so grateful that I've grown up in San Diego and have Baja as my backyard. It's this thing of like, I couldn't imagine growing up any other way, right? And I want to share that with more people, but like,
Not too many.
for sure, for sure. But you know, the thing is like, you know, you cross the border, and immediately it's like your blood pressure drops. You're like, shit, man, my cell phone doesn't work. Oh well, you know, all this other shit. You know, it's just you're going backwards a little bit in time, and you're getting back to the basics, and then you get out to the never as Cameron says, and then you know, the smell of the desert comes in, and
You know, that's another thing about the I made the comment of, you know, don't share it with everybody. Everybody who's listening to this that has some.
don't go to Mexico. It's dangerous.
Yeah, that's
horrible
like,
down there.
That's
Go
like glorifying the shark attack in front of your local local surf break.
Exactly.
No, we have we collectively have a responsibility that, you know, if we're going to invite people into this lifestyle, whether it's in Baja or here in Johnson Valley, and I think Dave's done a great job of creating a culture where we are encouraged to hold each other accountable to how we act.
Sure.
You know, and that's the big one. I mean, especially with the side-by-side element entering Baja
100%.
or any of the deserts for that matter. You know, there's a lot more people, a lot less people that have been brought up since they were children, understanding, you know, the unwritten rules and the etiquette, and then just the fucking common sense sometimes of, you know, taking your trash home. And but I think that's something else that's important for the three of us and other people. Like I said, man, that's listening to this. You're listening to this for a reason. You know, it's on us to make sure that that what we do and how we live our lives is perceived properly for what it actually is, because there's consequences. You deal with those with BLM and all that. I mean, we have to do a good job of ushering in the new people that are learning about this thing that we love so much, and making sure that they treat it in a way that it doesn't go away.
Yeah. I think, you know, again, coming from action sports, I learned a super valuable lesson when rollerblades became popular. You know, we were like, oh, fuck these guys, right? You know, and it was a mistake. We were kids, right? And instead, we should have invited them in and said, hey, you know, what is our goal? Our goal is to convert you into a lifer, into a skateboarder, or whatever, right? And we didn't do that. And I feel the same way about UTVs and us being, you know, one of the guys who've really led the charge on UTVs. I'm like, look, we want everybody to come in and have a good time and have this experience in Johnson Valley and, you know, on the Mint course, you know, in Baja. It's incredible. It's an incredible thing for humans to experience. But respect it.
Yeah.
And respect all the people, right? You know, wear a fucking helmet, number one. You know, don't trash it. And, you know, if you really want some
Stop
social...
when you see people that are stranded.
Well,
Don't drive by them.
Pick up some other people's trash.
Help them out. Give them parts.
Yep, help other people, right? Like the tenements of our culture, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm excited for the future, man. I mean, we've definitely got some shit to accomplish and some bumps and all this kind of stuff. But, man, we've never had a time in off-road that's this prosperous, that this many vehicles, you know, are available to everybody and so on. So I'm excited for the future.
Yeah. I am too.
We go in these waves, and it's just interesting, you know, to see the shifts in the off-road industry and desert racing specifically. It's like we just go through these shifts, and I'm really excited to see what the next kind of 10-year shift brings, you know?
I think there's an interesting crossover that's happening right now because of the side-by-side and also because of the overlanding movement.
Yes.
You know, and it's funny, somebody brought this up down in Cabo when I was down there this summer. Saw one of the sprinters driving by. It's like, oh man, the vandemic continues. But again, the accessibility with the UTV combined with this renewed interest in the outdoors and the places that you can go when you're overlanding, the density. That's I guess what you guys keep talking about how you're excited, and I guess I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm excited. I'm watching it going, man, I wonder what's going to happen. How is this all going to pan out? You know, maybe and I'm not being pessimistic, but you and I do this every time we talk.
Sure.
More and bigger for me isn't necessarily better.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about, you know, racing or recreating, I think there's a healthy balance that there's a threshold, right? I don't know where it's at.
And I wonder because, that's a whole nother story, but it's like also, I guess just the growth, talking about the overlanding people, now the UTV side-by-side people, and the amount of new influx of just bodies that we're getting into off-road culture. But then we've got on the political side less and less areas to do what we like, and I'm going, at some point, we're going to have a civil war. I mean, it's literally like it's a weird place we're in.
I think that there's two things to understand is like trailheads, like the idea of a trailhead and where everybody goes, and that's where you see the impact. Because I go out and clean up trash, right?
Yeah,
and that's where we see it, and that stuff gets hammered. But when you scale out for a second, you go, okay, stop thinking about local. Micro and go macro for a second. It's like we're talking about the Sonoran Desert and the Mojave Desert. I mean, we haven't scratched the surface, right? And and then you back out to the other deserts of just America, and it's like yes, there is stress on the trailheads, and we need to provision for that and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But to me, this is the best case scenario. It's like people actually want to do what we love, right?
He's the more is better guy.
No, I'm the
He's glass half full.
I'm the hey, I'm in a band, and all of a sudden everybody likes Metallica, right? I'm like, cool. Guess what? We can pay rent, right?
Yeah. No, there is definitely, again, that's that double-edged sword thing. That's how I've made my living most of my life.
I think there's a way to sustainably manage it.
I do too.
But I also understand the numbers, right? When you look at this event with King of the Hammers, you look at the numbers and the impact, and then you look at all the companies, and we're talking about hundreds, not $1 billion. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars globally that off-road affects.
Sure.
So, we'll figure it out. Well, that was awesome. I'm gonna cut it off because
how long's it been?
I got to take a leak, guys. My bladder's getting gladder. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you bet, man.
Yeah,
very awesome that you just happened to walk by, and appreciate
you into this. 2 hours later, Ryan gets to leave.
Yeah,
it's been cool.